there's a really interesting monster described in the book of Revelation in the Bible. Its Hebrew word is Abaddon, or Hebrew name is Abaddon, and the Greek version is Apollyon. Apollyon becomes more famous in the West, in the Christian West later, because that version appears in John Bunyan's book, Pilgrim's Progress. Today we're going to talk about Apollyon. This creature is described sometimes as the devil himself, sometimes as the Antichrist, and sometimes as some other monster altogether. It's not clear from the text. For example, the word means destroyer or destruction, and in the early, in the Pentateuch, it sort of means a place of destruction or the general phenomenon, but later, like in the book of Revelation, it's a person, it's a creature, and then that creature attacks the hero in Pilgrim's Progress later. So today we're going to talk about Apollyon, the destroyer. This is supposed to be the angel of the bottomless pit, and also the angel leader, the dark angel that leads the sort of evil locusts with human faces and stingers that appear in the book of Revelation. So it's a fairly creepy and terrible monster. And hopefully you'll learn something that you didn't know about Apollyon today on Monsterology. Okay, here's the image that I've drawn, and I tried to make a nostalgic kind of look to this thing. And you're going to see that I start out with traditional techniques here. Primarily, I'm doing like an ink drawing. There's a very light pencil drawing underneath this, which I couldn't really show you. It's sort of step one in like a 10-step process here. But it's simply so faint that you can't really make it out on the camera. But if you're going to try and tackle this kind of drawing, just do a kind of map with pencil, and then start to get into it with some ink, which is what I'm doing here. And you'll notice that I'm using what's basically a kind of ink brush pen. So it's got real ink in it. It's made in Japan. It's really a beautiful brush. It comes to a very fine point, but you can get a thick to thin line all in one sort of gesture. And you'll see that in drawing, this is really crucial. If you have a really simple pen, you just get a very straight, flat line where the thickness is basically uniform. You don't want that in a drawing. It just makes the drawing look kind of dead. So you'll see what I'm doing here is using, the fatter part of the brush all the way to the tapered thin part to get the kind of dynamic line work that you want. So I'm going to be laying this in with pen and ink, and then eventually I transfer it over to my iPad where I color it. While you see me doing the drawing here, let me tell you a little bit about Apollyon. I looked at some wonderful images from the pictorial tradition, and there's some great etchings and paintings of Apollyon over the time. Here you see he's holding a dagger, or really a dart. Apollyon throws darts in the story that we get from Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. But let me just give you a quick reference to the appearance of Apollyon in the book of Revelation. It occurs in book 9, chapter, I don't know if it's chapter 11 or something. But if you go to book 9 of Revelation, you can find it. Remember, what's happening here is it's the end of the world. God has come back. Jesus has come back. God has come back, and there's a kind of fierce fight between those sort of impious people who've been stamped with the mark of the beast, and those who've been, living good, pious lives, and they're going to go to heaven. And this is basically like right in the heart of the battle. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and here it says, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. And unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses, prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings had as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. And woe is past, and behold, there comes 2 woes more hereafter. So that's a passage from the book of Revelation, and you can see it's the introduction of Apollyon as sort of the king or the head evil one who's sort of reigning over these locusts who are torturing men. I'm basically using a pen and ink right now. You can see it's just dipping the pen, the stylus, into India ink, and then doing the same kind of technique I was doing with the brush pen, but you can get a much finer line, and it looks like sort of an etching from the Renaissance period. So you can see me doing it here, and you get a little ASMR taste of the pen hitting the paper, which I, for one, really like. In any case, that's the introduction of the creature Apollyon. No more is really said about this creature. But then he crops up again in the 17th century book called Pilgrim's Progress. And I recommend Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. It's like the first, literary hero's journey that has been repeated over and over again. Everything from Raiders of the Lost Ark to Star Wars. It's basically this guy named Christian who's on an adventure to find righteousness and purify himself and make himself a better person, and he has to battle one monster after another. And in Pilgrim's Progress, Christian basically comes across this creature Apollyon in a forest. And they sort of have a debate at first, and Apollyon says, hey, you were born in this region, and I rule over this region, so bow down to me. And Christian says, well, you've kind of been a terrible ruler, and I'm basically answering to this new guy, Jesus and God. And Apollyon gets pissed off about this and basically then tries to kill him. So I'm going to read to you just 2 paragraphs from Pilgrim's Progress. Then did Christian draw his sword. For as he saw it time to bestir him, and Apollyon as fast made at him, throwing darts as thick as hail, by the which, with notwithstanding all that Christian could do to avoid it, Apollyon wounded him in his head, his hand, and foot. This made Christian give a little back. Apollyon therefore followed his work amain, and Christian again took courage, and resisted as manfully as he could. This sore combat lasted for over half a day, even till Christian was almost quite spent. For you must know that Christian, by reason of his wounds, must needs grow weaker and weaker. Then Apollyon, espying his opportunity, began to gather up close to Christian, and wrestling with him, gave him a dreadful fall. And with that Christian's sword flew out of his hand. Then said Apollyon, I am sure of thee now. And with that he had almost pressed him to death, so that Christian began to despair of life. But as God would have it, while Apollyon was fetching of his last blow, thereby to make a full end of this good man, Christian nimbly stretched out his hand for his sword, and caught it, saying, Rejoice not against me, O mine enemy. When I fall, I shall rise. And with that, Christian gave him a deadly thrust, which made him give back, as one that had received his mortal wound. Christian, perceiving that, made at him again, saying, Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors, through him that loved us. And with that Apollyon spread forth his dragon's wings, and sped him away, that Christian for a season saw him no more. And so that's the passage. There's some interesting stuff that follows. For example, Christian basically claims that it was the archangel Michael who seemed to come to his rescue here in this battle, and so he gives thanks. And then he sort of sends out a kind of warning to Beelzebub. And many of you have heard the name Beelzebub, and there's a lot of debate in scholarship about who Beelzebub is. It's actually very similar to the kinds of debates you see about Apollyon. Some think that Beelzebub is the devil himself or Satan. Others think that it's a henchman of Satan, while others think he's sort of just one among many within the pantheon of evil spirits. In any case, Christian here says that Apollyon was the servant of Beelzebub, and Christian's coming for Beelzebub too. So it's a kind of a warning. Here in the drawing, what you see I'm doing is I'm coloring the image inside the Apple iPad Procreate function. And I dialed in the colors, and then I desaturated them severely so that you had much less color. And that gives it that nostalgic quality, which I really love. Okay, I hope you love the drawing. I hope you love the story. And come back for more Monsterology in the future. Take care.